We were up 600% year over year for the month in the month of April. So that month alone, I mean, we were doing 7x the number of units we were doing last year.
Hey, my name is Felix Tia, and I'm the host of Shopify Masters, a weekly podcast powered by Shopify, the easiest way to sell online, in person, and anywhere in between. Each week, we invite entrepreneurs like you to share what they've learned growing successful e-commerce businesses. In this episode, you'll learn how they sold a year's worth of bikes in just one quarter and the logistics involved in pulling it off, the 3 ways that you can compete in a marketplace, and how to use showrooms to learn exactly how to market to your customers. Before we get into our show, I want to share a strategy some businesses are using to help manage cash flow during COVID-19. They're selling gift cards. Gift cards give customers a way to support you right now. We've seen some creative ways to market them, like selling gift cards at a discount, giving special offers for customers who redeem them in the future, and adding free gift cards to high-value cards as a bonus. As part of Shopify's response to COVID-19, gift cards are now available on all Shopify plans, so you can start selling them right away. For more information, visit shopify.com/gift card. Today, I'm joined by Ryan Zagata, president and founder of Brooklyn Bicycle Company, which was started in 2011 and based out of Brooklyn and is a 7-figure business. Welcome, Ryan.
Hey, thanks. Happy to be with you, Felix.
So you decided to start this business after moving to Brooklyn. So tell us about the inspiration behind that. What inspired you to start this business?
Yeah, this goes back prior to 2011. In 2008, we were looking for a home to start a family. And I mean, anyone who's familiar with New York knows that the economics of finding a multi-bedroom home in Manhattan don't make a heck of a lot of sense. So we started looking to Brooklyn. We kind of left Manhattan kicking and screaming. It's kind of dating myself here, but if you go back to the Sex and the City episodes of the late 90s, nobody wanted to move to Brooklyn or go over the bridge. But frankly speaking, the economics of it made sense. So in 2008, we moved to Brooklyn. Within about a week of moving here, we realized that it was like the best thing we could have ever done. And we were really embraced by the community here. And for me, the community was probably a 9 or 10 block radius where I would walk to a local coffee shop, a local gallery, or a local restaurant or somewhere, or a park. And after living here for probably about a year, I was looking for a bicycle because I really wanted to expand the radius of that community well beyond the 8 or 10 blocks that I would walk. And it just became a 30 or 40 block radius and really expanded the radius of my community. So for me, I never looked at a bicycle as being something I would race on. I'm not into mountain biking. I do some road biking, but it wasn't really about the bike itself as much as it was about expanding the radius of my community. The bike just happened to be the way to do that. When I told my wife I wanted to get another bike, because I did have a road bike at the time that was used mostly for drying clothes, hanging clothes on, she's like, well, as soon as you get rid of your road bike, we can get another bike. I mean, if you live here in New York City, another thing, there's not big apartments here. There's not a lot of room for bicycles. So really for me, it had been when I moved to Brooklyn, just experiencing the community, the sense of community here, and giving people an opportunity, or for myself, mostly giving an opportunity to expand further, learning about new cafes, new galleries, new public spaces to take our children. And that was 2011. I mean, fast forward to today, and we have 450 partners that carry our bikes. We focus exclusively on urban mobility, so we design and manufacture bicycles focusing exclusive on urban mobility. And as I suggested, we have 2 channels, certainly an e-commerce platform where we leverage Shopify, and we also have a wholesale brand where we have about 450 partners in the United States and Canada, distribution in South America, and distribution in Europe as well.
Got it. So it sounds like that value prop that you mentioned earlier about urban mobility. Can you speak more about that? What does that mean to you guys?
Yeah, it's how do you get people in and around major metropolitan areas? So certainly, I mean, we're in a unique time right now with what's going on with the global pandemic. So it's actually taking on profound, new meaning for everybody. But how do you move people in and around major metropolitan areas? We're fortunate enough here in New York to have a subway, buses, certainly pedestrian ways to get around the city. We have ferry system. We have Ubers. We have City Bike. How do you get people around the city safely, quickly, economically, comfortably. And more people are turning to bicycles. So I think if we were doing this podcast a year ago, we would have all sorts of hopes and aspirations that the city would continue to increase and enhance infrastructure, not just in New York, but in every major metropolitan area. But with the pandemic, there is a phenomenon now. I mean, earlier, we've sold an entire season's worth of bikes between January 1st and probably about April 15th. And we'd ran out of bikes. And this is a total phenomenon as far as bikes are concerned. And my hope is that a lot of these major metropolitan areas, these urban areas where people are commuting from, to and through rather, will embrace these new commuters, really throw their arms around them and help them to become, feel safe and continue to, look at bicycles as a way of commuting around the city. It certainly makes economic sense. And I think a lot of people are going to be reluctant, again, not just in New York, but every city, to jump back into public transportation.
So a year's worth of sales, and it sounded like one quarter, maybe a little bit over a quarter. What was the exact reason that you saw that huge spike in growth over the first quarter of the year?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I certainly think I love to pat ourselves in the back saying we're doing a tremendous job. And I think as a team, there are certainly some things that we've done and focused on that have moved the needle substantially. But by and large, this is a little bit of luck, just being in the right business at the right time. People, you have really three phenomenon going on. I spoke to one, which is public transportation, but the other two also played a big hand. One of them being every fitness studio, gym, spin studio, pool in America has been shut down. So people are looking for a way to exercise and get out of their house when they're on lockdown. And then the other one certainly being people in suburban areas, not necessarily looking for exercise, but looking for some sort of recreation with their families. Kids, playgrounds are shut down, parks are shut down, beaches are shut down in many areas, amusement parks, water parks. It seems like there's not a lot of opportunities for children to get out and do things. Again, bikes have satiated that need for people to get out and have some recreation. So those three phenomenon collectively hitting simultaneously. Here in the United States, the federal government also set out some money to some individuals, who are below a certain income level. And we certainly saw a spike there. But by and large, it's just those three phenomenon: recreation, fitness, and transportation kind of coming together simultaneously. And I don't want to take away from what our team has done to really help grow the business. I mean, we've certainly busted our butts to get in front of a lot of magazines. We feel quite confident about our product and the quality of the product and the service that we deliver. So we really put ourselves out there to have the bikes reviewed. I don't think you can type city bike or commuter bike without us showing up on one of those lists. And, hats off to our team here, our marketing team, our marketing folks for really working their butts off to get our bikes out there in front of people, just having the confidence that we put out a good product and letting it speak for itself.
Makes sense. So I think some of those factors that led to the huge spike in sales for you guys are temporary. I think you can say some of them at least are temporary. How do you plan to extend this demand, or at least as much as you can, given the newfound, I guess, interest in buying bikes for commuting and for exercise?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is going to be some longer term benefits. I don't think there's any question there, but you're right. I mean, I think of those three phenomena I referenced, commuting is probably the only one that's going to have legs. I think some of the people who are buying these bikes for recreation 12 months from now, they may be sitting in the garage collecting dust. I certainly hope that's not the case, but I think that's a strong possibility. But as far as commuting, I think, we're taking it upon ourselves. We're working with some advocacy organizations, People for Bikes, Transportation Alternatives here in New York, People for Bikes being a national organization, and just really trying to get in front of people who make the decisions in major metropolitan areas that, there's so many new people on the road. I mean, we probably ourselves put just around 10,000 people on the road in New York alone, earlier part of this year. How do you embrace those people? How do you make them feel safe when the city kind of, quote unquote, gets back to normal? How do you make sure they feel safe? How do you help them commute without feeling that their lives are in danger? So there's certainly things that we can control, but there's things that we cannot control, and that being the infrastructure in place. So a lot of what I'm spending some time on now is speaking to local council members here in New York City, writing to council members and mayors in other major metropolitan areas and Department of Transportation commissioners in major cities, and just encouraging them to, do the right thing, making their city more livable. It makes economic sense. It makes a city, less vehicular traffic, makes a city a great place to live as well. So, I've kind of put on my advocacy hat now that we've blown through a bunch of inventory. inventory. And I'm also mindful. I mean, listen, we're losing a ton of opportunity now. I mean, every day we're probably getting, I mean, we're getting tons of traffic, but also probably 20 or 30 phone calls. Do you have this bike? Do you have that bike? And frankly speaking, it would have been quite callous of me, or pretty cavalier rather of me, to, have some aggressive forecast and buy 3 or 4 times the number of bikes we would traditionally sell in a year. And if the pandemic didn't hit, it's like predicting an earthquake. We would have been bankrupt. So yeah, certainly disappointing to not have bikes to fulfill a lot of the demand that's out there. But the other side of the equation is equally as important, of realizing if we had been overly aggressive and this pandemic, I mean, who knew this pandemic was going to happen? I think
sure.
a lot of people would have done things differently. But I think if we had gone all in and brought in a ton of bikes and nothing like this happened, this would be a much different conversation.
Now, when you did see that spike, how did you deal with the logistics? And like, it sounded like you had some inventory squeeze from this spike in demand. What was that like when you started seeing these bikes fly off the shelves at like 4 times the speed that it was previously? How did you guys react to that?
Yeah, I mean, speaking specifically to the month of April, we were up 600% year over year, or year over year for the month, in the month of April. So that month alone, I mean, we were doing 7x the number of units we were doing last year. So we were quite fortunate. Earlier this year, we opened up a little operations center in the Philippines. So we have some team members there who are helping us. Our team member in New York, so we staffed up a little bit here as well. Everyone's working from home, so I think we're able to capture a little bit of operational efficiencies by people not having to spend 20, 30 minutes or an hour commuting each way. So we picked up some wins there. But we really rely on our partners. We rely on the 3PL, the third-party logistics warehouses that fulfill our bikes, and we are in communication with them. I don't want to say 24/7, but every day of the week. What are your plans? What happens if someone gets sick in the facility? And just really understanding what can go wrong here. We brought a lot of bikes. 2018, we opened a physical showroom in Greenpoint. We brought a lot of bikes into our showroom physically and just left them there in case something happened with our warehouse. So we really did a kind of a trauma. We had like a trauma center and said, what could possibly go wrong? What can we do in advance of it going wrong to circumvent that should something go wrong? And most of it was logistics. We rely on FedEx for the ground transportation. By and large, they did an okay job. But I think when the pandemic was in full tilt here in New York and everything was shutting down and everyone was on lockdown, FedEx would do some drive-by deliveries where they wouldn't even attempt to make a delivery, even though bicycle shops had been deemed essential infrastructure and they were open. So we certainly had some challenges there, but really just having the confidence in your infrastructure that you put in place, your partners, and not only did we do a trauma before, we did a post-trauma. So once we kind of ran out of a lot of inventory, we looked back and said, all right, what happened here? What did we do right? What broke? And how do we prevent that from happening again? So we implemented NetSuite as our ERP in 2018. It's been an awesome solution. And we hadn't been relying upon it. We had kind of been taking baby steps, but more or less overnight, we kind of dove right into NetSuite and started leveraging a lot of the power of that solution as an ERP to help communicate with our customers, let them know when they can expect their deliveries, let them know when bikes are going to be back in stock, communicate with our wholesale customers, let them know when bikes are going to be back in stock. So it really, having that infrastructure in place was great, but being able to flip those levers and turn different parts of the solution on, in very short order was also helpful. And then lastly, I mean, I know this is a Shopify podcast, but the Shopify infrastructure that we have in place and how it plugs into everything, really, that was probably the biggest win for us, how easy it was for us to go out and update our customers or snap in an app, a pre-order app, for example. When we ran out of bikes, how do we get people, able to how do we keep our revenue flowing even though we don't have product to sell? So we started implementing things like a pre-order app and other applications to inform people when things are going to be back in stock. We use some different mapping applications on the platform. So how do we let people know who has inventory, who doesn't have inventory? So just really relying on all the infrastructure that we had in place, and most of it being technology to keep ourselves above water. But it was overwhelming to say the least. And to your point earlier, Felix, I don't anticipate we're going to see that level of growth. But Organic growth, be that as it may, begets organic growth. So we feel confident. We put out a good product. We give great experiences to customers, and word travels fast. 4 or 5 years ago, I'm sorry, 6 or 7 years ago, we were more in our infancy. Not a lot of people had our bikes. There wasn't a lot of word of mouth out there. But when you're putting, 10,000 bikes, 20,000 bikes a year out into the street, people talk. They have a good experience. They tell their friends who are looking for bikes, you should get a Brooklyn. And that's really been a big source of traffic for us. I mean, most of our web traffic now is organic, predominantly from best of lists, as I mentioned before. We had a pretty aggressive campaign over the past few years to get our bikes out in front of major publications, the New York Times, Bicycling Magazine, Cool Runnings, a lot of different publications out there who do bike reviews, Forbes, and I can probably go on for hours, Business Insider, just sending product, letting them come to the showroom, test ride our bikes, experience our buy and ride program. Bikes are a little bit different than many other products that you sell online in that they're big, they're durable goods, and they require assembly and arguably professional assembly. If you simply send someone a bike and say, good luck putting it together, two things will happen. Number one, most customers are going to have a pretty bad experience. Not many people are excited to get a bike in a box on their front porch. And then certainly we don't want the liability of someone self-assembling the bike with their friends over a bottle of wine on a Friday evening.
It's not like IKEA furniture, huh?
Yeah, I mean, what's the worst thing that happens if you assemble a nightstand incorrectly? It's a little bit wobbly, right? And that's something you could probably live with. If a bike isn't assembled incorrectly, you're going to roll into traffic, and the best thing that might happen is you'll fall off your bike. The worst thing that could happen, let's not even go there, but there's consequences, I think, is what I'm suggesting. Early on, one of the challenges that we faced really early on in the business was everybody wanted to see the bikes. It's not like, again, Nike sneakers that are everywhere and your friend has them. We didn't have the economies of scale yet where our bikes were out there in the public domain. Everyone wanted to see and touch and feel the bikes. So simply throwing up a website and selling bicycles wasn't really the solution. We had to quickly go out and source and look for partners who would stock our bikes or at least put them on their floor for people to test ride. So that was a really early struggle for us, is everyone's calling, where can I try your bike? And I'm just like, what do you got to try a bike for? It's a bike. And it's like this, that was an ignorant thought on my part. But at the same time, it really pushed us in the direction of how do we get infrastructure in place where people can touch and see. And that was the beginning of our wholesale program. And now that's over half of our business is wholesale. We have a buy and ride program. So every single bike purchased on our website is shipped to a bike shop for professional assembly. That's baked into the price. Nobody's paying for shipping. Nobody's paying for professional assembly. And it's also good because these bike shops are getting a new customer walking in their door who will pick up a bike, but then they also turn around and buy a helmet, buy a lock, buy a bell. Of the 450 partners that we have who do assemblies for us, over half of them have become dealers, through the assembly partner program. They learned about us through assembling our bikes. They liked our customers. They liked our product. And now they subsequently are stocking our bikes in their showroom. So it's been a great source of wholesale business for us as well to kind of put our bikes out there. But again, what was the problem? The struggle was that people wanted to see our bikes. And the solution for that was, setting up some wholesale infrastructure, some showrooms where people could actually go and see the bikes.
So you said a lot of awesome things there. So I want to dive into it. So one of the ones that you were just talking about just now was about this request from your customers before they were comfortable buying to first see the bike. So before, I'm assuming it takes a while to set up this kind of whole chain of the dealers and partners to have your bikes out in showrooms or to eventually even have them as retailers for you. In the meantime, were you able to do anything to try to overcome some of these hesitations that your prospective customers had before purchasing?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing for us that we continue to do to this day is make ourselves infinitely accessible, is what I like to call it. That means everywhere you go on your website, something's going to pop up. Call us, chat with us, set up a concierge. So we hadn't done this at the time, but one of the things that we also implemented is people can do a video call in and we'll walk them through our products. We're about to start taking advantage of Shopify's 3D, so you can actually do a VR and drop a bike in front of you. It's super clever, and you can kind of walk up and almost as if you're there. But so we're taking advantage of different technologies. But in the very near term, it was just scheduling phone calls, consultations with people, and walking them through, making sure we're asking the right questions, understanding what their needs were. You walk into a bike shop and they're going to push the first bike they see at you without asking too many questions. I tell the team that we're very much like doctors. It's our job to diagnose, what these people need, ask the right questions, and then prescribe something to them. And the example I always give is, imagine if you walked into a doctor and he just handed you a prescription before he even talked to you. That would be pretty awkward, way to visit a doctor if he just handed you a prescription.
Malpractice too.
Malpractice as well, for sure, and to say the least. But the thought process here is like, it is our job, it is our obligation to understand what these people are looking for before we go out and start selling. And people all the time are so quick to just, oh, this will be great. You need this, and maybe they don't need that. Maybe they don't need our $500 product. Our $450 product might work, or maybe they need our $800 product. And what sort of accessories do they need to go with it to have a successful and a great experience with the brand? I don't want to not sell someone a lock and then find out their bike was stolen a week later. So we use solutions like Candy Rack to offer add-ons on a product by product basis that we think are appropriate, for customers to use. But just to take a step back, because this kind of goes to how we get where we were from a design process. I'm not of the bike industry. I was actually in technology. I worked for a software company. I sold software for many years. And prior to that, I worked in finance with municipal finance, helping cities finance their infrastructure, roads, stadiums, schools. So when I had the idea, when I bought a bike and realized how it had changed my life, and had the idea to start the business in 2011, I had a couple prototypes made. Again, I didn't know a lot about bikes, but I humbled myself and went to about a dozen bike shops here in New York City. And I brought the bike to the shop, and I said, "Look, this bike isn't my. It's not my child. It's not my wife or my mistress or my friend. I don't care about this bike. All we care about is making a better product. And to that end, what can you tell me? Would you carry this bike?" And without fail, they all said, "No way, I wouldn't carry this bike." And I didn't care. Again, as I said before, I don't have any relationship with this bicycle. It's a widget to me. I just want to make better products. And so they all gave me feedback. And I went back to our supplier at the time who was making our prototypes, and we implemented those. And fast forward 90 days when our first container of bikes lands, and I go to some of these bike shops, and they became our first 4 or 5 bike shops early on, who are going to start carrying our bikes. So it was just, again, putting your idea out there. I'm not a believer that there's really any original idea in the world. I think a lot of this stuff is just rehashed, old ideas that have been rehashed, based on what today's circumstances are. So, nobody's signing NDAs, and this is a bicycle, so there's nothing overly crazy about it. But again, our commitment as a team was to put the best product out there as we possibly can. And again, not being from the bike industry, while it has helped me in many, many ways, and I would say it's helped me infinitely, just by not, kind of ignoring a lot of the original ideas of the bike industry and focusing on what I thought would be appropriate. But one way it certainly posed a challenge is that I didn't know what constituted a good bike or a great bike or an amazing bike. And that's, where we set out to design our product, by just putting these in front of everyone we could possibly get in front of in the industry. And they were by and large really receptive. And the unplanned effect of that is we ended up getting some early customers who did end up putting our bikes in their showroom or buying some to sell to their customers. So it ended up working kind of twofold.
So I think this is a really important lesson that you're talking about, which is your ability to divorce yourself from the product. And you did that with your bicycle, at least the early prototypes. And just so you can get better and more honest feedback. To be honest, you'll get the feedback at some point, regardless. When you put it out into the market, no one buys it. That is feedback. But you're willing to get the feedback as early as possible. So I think this is an important lesson, because I think a lot of people are married to the product, married to the first prototypes, married to the idea, and it might be closing themselves off from the feedback that they need to improve the product, or maybe even change it all altogether. So any advice for anyone out there that is kind of really stuck to their product and just has a hard time taking that kind of advice when it feels like it's their baby, like you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just tell a story that in about 2017, so mind you, we started the business in 2011, I was riding my bike around Brooklyn, and I saw somebody on one of our original bikes from 2011. And I approached this gentleman, and I gave him my card and said, "Do me a favor. Whenever you get a chance, bring that bike to our showroom, and I want to give you a new one. I want to take that one back." And I will tell you without fail, if you have a product and you have to look at it as a widget, at some point you'll be embarrassed of your first go-to-market product. It's not, doesn't matter. It's not done good. It's not bad. It doesn't mean it's horrible. It just means that you will get that much better, that you'll be embarrassed when someone has your first product. And my experience was 3 years ago. I saw somebody riding our 6-year-old bike, so I was happy it was still on the street. But we had gotten so much better as a brand. Our products were so much better. Our QC was so much better. Our fulfillment was so much better. That I just wanted I felt like I wanted to do right by this guy. I mean, he'd been supporting us or riding his bike for 6 or 7 years. So again, I was delighted that it had lasted, but I knew that we could do better. And I don't know if embarrassed was the word, but I was more or less like, I want to do right by this guy. He's been riding his bike that, probably wasn't the best bike we could have put out there. But again, we wanted to get to market as quickly as possible. And our way of getting to market quickly was going to these bike shops, taking that feedback and putting it out there. But subsequent to that, we've just, made boatloads of improvements based on customer feedback and what have you. So, my advice would be just acknowledge that somewhere along the line, you're going to put a better product out there. So, by marrying yourself to your original product and thinking that's going to be the end of the world, that's kind of a losing proposition. That's what I would say. And again, we're always in the pursuit. I mean, as a brand, I think there's 3 different ways you can compete, right? You can be the least expensive of something, and you could be the best of something. Those are 2 ways, the cheapest or the best. And I find both of those ways to be fleeting because anybody can undercut your price. There's always someone willing to go out of business to sell more of something. It's inevitable. It happens. I mean, look at the bankruptcies right now. There's always someone willing to drive themselves out of business to show an increased top line and completely disregard their margins. There's always someone who could, put a better pedal on a bike or a better handlebar or a better grip or a better saddle. So I think from we make the best perspective, that's also a little bit of a fleeting thing to keep trying to one up the next company. And for me, the way I have always been taught to compete is by being different. That's something that nobody can replicate. If you're different, if you give someone a different experience, if you care about somebody, we give a damn about what people, what their experience is. And, it's actually damn probably isn't the right word that we use, but I've been advised not to curse on the podcast, but we do very much care about everybody's experience genuinely. I don't want to go to bed at night knowing that, somebody got a bike and had a bad experience at a shop. So, I can't prevent every bad experience out there, but when someone tells us they had a bad experience, we can certainly drop what we're doing and make it right for them. So that's something we also spend a lot of time doing is, inevitably it becomes fewer and fewer, but people have a bad experience. A lot of times it has to do with an assembly partner who may have hastily put a bike together. And how do you make amends on something like that? So that's a long way of saying don't be married to your product and a couple other tidbits in there.
Got it. So while you were going through this process of iterating on your product, you did something that's interesting that I think I want to talk about a little more, which is that you went to the people that worked in the industry, into the shops and got the feedback from, I'm assuming, the employees that worked there. When a lot of people, when they think about how do I validate a product, how do I see what kind of changes I should make, what kind of feedback I should get, they go for like the end customer. And maybe your industry is different because maybe the workers are also, potential customers of yours. But why did you go for the bike shops instead of going for like a person that would have purchased a bike?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would liken it to if I was creating pots and pans. Do I want to go to someone who cooks at home, or would I want to go to a professional chef who knows pots and pans inside out, and probably will make a much better story when you go to market? So I wanted to go to experts who aren't just necessarily riding bikes, but also they're the ones who see when these bikes come in. If somebody purchased a bike at Target or Walmart or a $79 bike online, they're the ones who see these bikes when they come in. They see a lot of the missteps that brands have made. So for my mindset, I was like, well, I would rather go to a bike shop who is repairing these things subsequent to somebody purchasing and doing at-home assembly of a bike. What are they seeing with these products? So how do we avoid those from the jump? So that was kind of my methodology, is like, let's go to someone who is servicing this product, who's working with this product day in and day out, as opposed to someone who may be riding it. Because someone who's riding a bike may want to tell me, hey, you know what? You should get a really nice saddle and really nice grips. And I think those are very important. But let's not forget that a bicycle is a functional machine. It needs to roll and stop and go slower and faster and keep you safe and do a lot of different things at once. Again, it's not something that just needs a visually appeal to somebody. If you see our website, we focus a lot on visual appeal, but that's something we can kind of do on our own. But to find out functionally speaking, this is a functional machine. So I want to go someone who knows this machine inside and out, and that's why we went to the bike shops.
Hey, real quick, if you're enjoying the show, please leave us a review on iTunes to let us know what you think or what you'd like to hear more of. Now, let's get back to the interview. Got it. So you mentioned that you're not of the industry, you're not an industrial designer, you came in with these prototypes. How did that process even begin? I mean, I would think that a lot of people that are starting a business, creating a product from scratch, they would pick something a little bit simpler to start off with. But you start off with a bicycle. How did you even get on this process of even coming up with a prototype for a bike?
Yeah, hindsight is 2020. Would I have done a bicycle again? Who knows? We're having a lot of fun now. But yeah, that's certainly a very valid point. So as part of where the business the seed was planted in 2008 when I moved to Brooklyn, but the light bulb didn't really go off per se until 2011 when I was traveling in Vietnam, and everyone around Ho Chi Minh City was riding around on a bicycle. And there's, not just for transportation, but they were vehicles where they were carrying cargo, and they had, stacks of wheat or linens or packages, whatever it was they were working with, stacked up on the back of their bike. And I looked at my wife at the time and I said, that's the exact bike I wanted. And before we'd even left Vietnam, I was just, online Googling bike manufacturers. There happened to be a very small bike manufacturer here in Brooklyn. And I was ordering a prototype before I even left Vietnam, literally. So we had our first prototype quite quickly, and that's where we ultimately ended up. That's where I ultimately ended up bringing that around to bike shops. So, it's finding someone who could put together a prototype for you, get something. It's very easy to show sketches and drawings and things like that, but I find it much easier if you have something tangible, even if it's not perfect. I think there's a saying out there that I use all the time that done is better than perfect. Having something tangible to bring to someone, to show someone, is always going to be much better than showing someone, some sort of digital 3D model. I mean, so just again, not being from the industry, really relying on this supplier to tell me, what would be important here, what would be important there, at least from the jump early on there. And then, having the humility to go to bike shops and say, look, I don't care about this product with the exception that I want to make it better. That was kind of phase 2 of that after I had the initial prototype built.
Got it. Okay, so once you had that initial prototype built, how long did it take before you had a version that was good enough at that time to go to market or into production?
Yeah, great question. So we set up the LLC in February of 11. So Vietnam was January of 11, and then we moved quickly. February of 11 was the LLC. Prototype was April of 11, and our first container of bikes was late August 2011. I happen to be married to a publicist, so a big and important part. Things I would, help people understand is that when I told her I was going to start a bike company, she said, "Who cares? Like, there's a million bike companies out there. Like, who cares? What's different? What are you going to do different?" And so that really helped me to step back and say, we need to think about, what's going to make us stand out as a brand. What is going to be our story as a brand? And that was something that really has always stuck with me, rather, when we're designing new products, when we're implementing something, when we're opening our showroom. Are we going to give a different experience? What are we going to do differently? And those words that she spoke to me have always resonated with me when we're designing something. Is like, what's newsworthy about this? What are people going to care about? Because if we just simply put out a new colored bike and all of a sudden we have a green bike and now we have a blue one, that's not newsworthy. You have to, you want to do something different and kind of move the needle and push it. So again, I think for me is just really stepping back and thinking, what's different about what it is that we're doing that would make this kind of newsworthy and appeal to people.
I like that. I like that. This is a really interesting approach about when you're thinking about releasing new products or releasing new features. You think about what is newsworthy, what would actually end up on a publication that wants to talk about you and your story. So are these like things that come from like a shower thought, or is there like some research process that you go through to understand what is something that's newsworthy to put out?
So, I mean, we have what I would call a secret sauce, and that's our showroom. Before this, a lot of it was talking to people in the industry, talking to all of our dealers, we do a lot of customer surveys. We don't just survey customers who've bought bikes. Actually, to be frank, a lot of the best best feedback we get is from people who didn't buy our bikes. And what we've learned is, obviously there's a lot of bike brands out there that we compete with, but we compete more with somebody not buying anything. They don't buy any bike as opposed to somebody buying a bike. We don't lose to another brand as much as we lose to somebody not buying anything. But when I talk about the secret sauce is we opened a showroom in Greenpoint in Brooklyn here in 2018. And the first thing I said to the team is, look, when someone walks in those doors, it is a win, whether they buy a bike or a helmet or they buy nothing at all. It is a win. It is an opportunity for us to watch them interact with our product. And again, we have been a wholesaler and an e-commerce brand. I don't really get to see very often people's first experience with our product. And I would imagine a lot of e-commerce brands are the same way. You ship somebody something, you don't get to see them unboxing it. You don't get to see them, using that pan or that knife or that putting that hat on for the first time. So we opened our showroom in 2018. It was like, this is like a flood of changes as far as what do we do for product improvement. So, it's a win when someone walks in because we're learning from them. I'm watching, what do they grip first on the bike? What do they look at first? What are the top 15 questions people are asking? And how do we answer those questions? Because now our website is really an extension of our showroom. It is like an online showroom. We'll do, as I mentioned before, virtual showroom visits, lots of different things. And the showroom is really, how do we take this showroom experience? So we have probably, 60 or 70 5-star reviews from people in the physical showroom. How do we take that experience we are giving people in the physical showroom and bring that over online? So we rely on a lot of tools for that. But to me, that is our secret sauce now in what we're designing in our new product pipeline. So, we're very quickly now learning what's missing from our portfolio that would have probably taken us 2 or 3 years to learn before from speaking to our dealers because they're sourcing those products from other brands. Now, when people come into our showroom and our brand is the only one on display, it's very quick to see what are the gaps in our portfolio that people are continually asking for. So that is now, I call our showroom, first of all, it's a great place to visit. We have a bar cart. We have a great musical system. We have a music system. We have a playlist that we jam out to in there. We have our design studio in the back so people can kind of see, how the bikes are designed and meet some members of the team. But really for us, while we sell bikes through there, we only fulfill again through our partners. So we don't send anybody out of the showroom with a bike. But selfishly, like, we are learning so much about our consumers, what they're looking for, what we don't have, what we do have, what other brands they're looking at. So it's just really been a tremendous asset, far exceeding anything we could have ever expected by opening up that showroom. And in fact, with the pandemic, I think there's going to be some opportunities for us to open up other showrooms in major metropolitan areas across the country. And that's something we're starting to look into.
Yeah, I like that. I think the showroom, a lot of times we think of it as an opportunity for the customer to learn more about us, about the products, but you're using it almost as a way to reduce the fog of war of learning more about your customers and being in business. Like what are all the things that we're missing because we can only hear from a telephone or see it online, but only bits here and there. So you can identify these small objections that you're talking about that can either be overcome in your marketing or on your website and the messaging or actual product improvements. So if anyone out there doesn't have a showroom or maybe doesn't have the means to get one, are there ways that you can replicate this online to get feedback from people that specifically didn't buy?
Yeah, so people who don't buy, so there's a couple things we do. We use to us, one of our biggest, far and away our biggest lead generator is a quiz to help people find the right product in our portfolio. So again, bikes can be a little bit confusing. Not everybody knows a lot about bicycles, so we try to be very educational, but we do offer a quiz, 3 questions, quick quiz, what style bike are you looking for? What type of, what's your terrain like? And I don't recall the third question off the top of my head, but that's a huge source of inbound leads for us. They get our newsletter. They fall into a little bit of a campaign early on to onboard them and introduce them to the brand and give them some educational information and share more about us. But just, again, trying to be generous as possible. Whether somebody buys our bike or they don't buy our bike, but they use us to learn more about bikes, at the end of the day, it's all a means to an end. But what we did do is people who are guided toward a certain bike, we capture that. So, Felix is guided toward this Bedford model, which, is our city model. And then 6 months later, Felix didn't buy that. So we'll send you a survey and say, hey, we noticed you didn't buy this. If you're interested, here's what maybe we'll throw you a free set of lights if you end up buying it. But if you didn't buy it, we'd still love to send you some lights if you bought another bike. But just let us know, like, here's 3 questions. Would you mind taking a second to answer that? And we get pretty good feedback on that. And again, it cost us, whatever a set of lights cost us. But at the same time, the information you get from people who didn't buy a bike is invaluable. So that's surveying people, capturing the leads we covered right there. Then also, how do you find out when people don't buy your product, what they did? Do they buy something else? Are they still saving up for it? So we get all sorts of answers. And then the other side of that equation of people who, there's many opportunities for showrooms, but one of the things we've done very recently with the pandemic, I mean, the pandemic has forced people to evaluate their business and do things in real time instead of plotting and testing. And our virtual showroom visits, again, you could do it from a home office if you wanted, but our virtual showroom visits have been phenomenal. I have a little stand there. I set up a camera. I stand in front of the camera. Someone gets a Zoom link, and I walk them through our models. And I ask questions. I get on the ground. I'll pick up the bike. I'll move the camera into the bike. I'll sit on the bike to kind of let them see the riding posture of the bike. And I don't think there's anyone out there that can't do this without any product. It doesn't really cost you anything other than your time. And again, it instills in your customers the fact that you give a damn about them and you want them to have the right product. And at the end of the day, if it's not the right product, it's fine. But it provides that same experience I mentioned before. You're getting to understand what are their questions, what are their concerns. And then from a website perspective, you can go back and edit your website to make sure you're addressing those, because a lot of people aren't going to call. But you better believe they're going to have the same questions that person who called in will have. They will have the same questions that person on that virtual visit did have. So it's a good opportunity also to, build, expand upon your FAQs or your product page, what information you're putting forth there on each individual product page.
So I like this concept of the quiz, and I think that last one that was height was part of the quiz that you asked as well. So how did you know that these were the questions to ask? Obviously it's to help recommend a bike, but does this data help the business in any other ways?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, we aggregate all this data. So we start to see, like, what's the demand for some, different height ranges. What's the demand? What's the terrain like? Do we need to offer bikes with a wider gearing range? Are we offering, bikes that have too many gears? So it really helps us to go back and see, based on all these people. And then also we try to capture where somebody is. So we can start seeing, hey, we're seeing a lot of demand in this metropolitan area. We don't have a showroom partner there. That also becomes part of our pitch to bike shops in those cities that, hey, we've seen a 7-fold increase in traffic in the Los Angeles metropolitan area, and we only have 2 partners there. We'd love to round out our portfolio and pick up somebody in Orange County or over in Santa Monica or downtown Los Angeles. So there's a couple things that data helps us to pick up. And again, all that goes back in. We kind of continue to refine. The team, we always say we're never done. We're always looking for more opportunities to expand the quiz. I know now we have another quiz to help people properly, not just give them the right size, but ask a bunch of questions to guide them toward the right model and the right size. So before we recommend, bikes based on your particular riding needs and what sort of style you're looking for, but now we're going to take that into consideration along with some other information, not just give them the model, but also say the model and size. So we're trying to take it a step further.
Got it. So now you mentioned that if they don't purchase, there's a certain amount of time that passes where you send them a survey about it. Do you remember a recent change that you had made to the website, either to the FAQs or just the way that you laid things out, or the messaging on the website that made a noticeable difference in sales that came from the responses to that survey for people that did not buy?
Yeah, well, there's 2 things. We also, one of the other huge things that we do is there's an app called Post-Purchase Survey that we use. And it really gives us insight into where our strengths lie, how people are hearing about us. So, one of the things that we've learned, we use Judge.me for reviews, which, we've been with them since the very beginning, and they're outstanding. But 60% of our customers in these post-purchase surveys are suggesting that the reviews, this is what led you to ultimately make the purchase, and it was the reviews. So again, what we try to do is emphasize the reviews higher up on the product page. I think even the reviews now can be found above the fold on our product pages. So those are some things that we've done. Specific to height, that's a big question. So we have a couple pop-ups now very early on above the fold on the product page that help people find the right size. So all these things, these conversations that we're having with folks. The other thing that kind of comes up a lot in these quizzes is, we don't have enough gears, or how do I get my bike? So we hit people over the head with our buy and ride program, which is how we ship the bike to a local bike shop. Because people, even though we have it all over the website, we still get questions. How am I going to get my bike? I don't know how to assemble a bike. And it is, you can't go to our website without seeing references on every page to our buy and ride program, but we still continually look for ways to how do we better explain the buy and ride program so that nobody has any doubt or any question that, yes, it's not fake news. It is not a fake promise. We are absolutely paying for shipping, and your bike will absolutely be professionally assembled in a bike shop local to you. And I don't know if people just, don't want to believe it, or they've been burned before, but there's no falsehoods here. It's very real. So we answer a lot of questions on how our buy and ride program works. So that's also something, as I suggested, we're trying to continually refine the imagery and the wording on how do we explain that program to make sure it's easily understood.
Now, you mentioned to us earlier on that over half of your sales is wholesale, or half of your business is wholesale, and also the buy and ride program. So how did you build this out? How did you organize this kind of infrastructure for supporting the supply chain essentially for your business?
Yeah, well, the buy and ride program, is painstakingly challenging. It was kind of one shop at a time. We'd get a sale in Phoenix, Arizona. We don't have an assembly partner there. We get on the phone. I'd call a local bike shop. We have a customer in Phoenix who purchased a bike. We don't ship our bikes to people's porches. Can we send it to you and we will pay you to professionally assemble the bicycle? And then, early on, when we were probably the pioneers of this program. Everyone in the bike industry is doing. Not everyone. A lot of brands in the bike industry are doing it now. But early on, we were. I think I've been told by a couple of shops we were one of the first ones to do it. And then, they get the bike and then they're like, oh, it was pretty good. How much do you sell your bikes for? And it's like, oh, it's whatever. It's $4.99, $5.49. Do you have a wholesale program? Yeah, we do. So that actually, one by one with sales, we built out this network. And then over time, we actually formalized the assembly partner program. And we went back to everyone who's ever built a bike for us and said, hey, we're going to create a flat fee program here. We're going to pay you X amount of dollars to do that. And in exchange, we're going to try to drive more physical foot traffic to your store. So there's a kind of our promise to you is anyone in Phoenix now, we will send to your shop. So we're not going to pick up 6 shops in Phoenix. We'll go for 1 or 2 shops in Phoenix. And then these bike shops ultimately see that there's nobody in Phoenix, Arizona stocking this brand, but this brand is doing well enough in selling bikes here, sight unseen. Maybe this is somebody we should talk to. So as I suggested, over half of our stocking dealers have come out of that assembly partner program. We just try to continually funnel all of our sales in every major metropolitan area through one, or depending on the size of the city, through 1 or 2 shops. And then, the more we continue to sell in those major metro areas, those shops ultimately will come back and be like, hey, how do we get on board here? And the other thing is, we operate with a lot of integrity. We don't compete against these dealers. If somebody buys a bike in Phoenix, Arizona on our website, we ship it to that shop and we flip that sale over to that shop. So we don't turn around and try to compete against our dealers and say, oh, somebody, the reference one of our dealers made when he first had his first sale was like, that was the easiest bike I've ever sold. It was 2 a.m. Maybe somebody came back from the local watering hole and bought a bike online at 2 a.m. I don't know. I don't ask questions, but I do know the bike shop was closed at 2 a.m. and we were open. So they bought a bike and that customer went to the bike shop to pick it up. That bike shop got credited with the sale and they've come back and, used that account credit to purchase more product.
Awesome. So are bicycles apt for repeat purchases? Like, what is that like?
Yeah, that's a great question. They're kind of durable goods. So the lifetime value of a customer is we focus a lot more on getting referrals than we do on trying to sell somebody a second bike.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to play in the $2,000 bike category, or if somebody falls in love with biking, maybe they get a road bike. I don't want to be the brand that's going to supply them that road bike. There's plenty of amazing road bike companies out there. And frankly speaking, we want to stay laser focused on this urban mobility. So we focus a lot more on how do we treat people incredibly well and give them a great experience. And, their lifetime value can be measured through the referrals they give us rather than their individual purchases. We do use, I mentioned before, we use Candy Rack. So we've probably seen a double-digit increase since we implemented Candy Rack in upsells. So it allows us to curate upsells by product. And upsells, that's probably not the appropriate word. It's recommendations that, hey, you should probably grab a lock. We love this helmet. This light set, it will be very helpful for you if you're riding at night. Just really some standard things you should be buying, and it'll pop up. But that's been a really tremendous app for us as well. And it's helped us. I wouldn't say it's increase the lifetime value, but it's certainly seen our average order value going up, at least double digits, if substantially.
Got it. So you mentioned Candy Rack, you mentioned Judge.me for your reviews. What other apps do you rely on to help run the business?
Yeah, I mentioned post-purchase surveys been great. I think everyone on your podcast uses Klaviyo. Obviously, their Shopify integration is incredibly powerful. They also carry the data over to Facebook, which has allowed us to build some really powerful Facebook audiences to retarget to. We use Smart Menu by Quickify, which is great. That allows us to show images in our mega menu. So we used to put product names in the menus. So now we use images so people can visually see what they're going to click through to, because our product names don't mean anything to customers. So it really just enables better overall functionality and navigation, and it gets people very quickly to our product pages as opposed to sending them to a catalog page. Talk.to we use for our chat application. It's plenty powerful. It's free. It's plenty powerful for what we need in terms of auto responses. And also it allows to give contextual messages depending on where a user is located. So if they're in New York, we may pop up, hey, come visit us in the showroom. So that's also another great application. And lastly, I think it's outside of the Shopify ecosystem. There's no app, but Outgrow is what we use for our quiz. And that's been a massive lead generator for us, and it's just really allowed us to flow people into our pipeline, and whether they buy our bike or another bike from somebody else, just help us to educate them and get them on board as a comfortable consumer. Because again, bikes are something that can be intimidating. I think the reason a brand like us can exist is because a lot of shops, not all, in fact, there's a lot of tremendous bike shops out there, but there's a tendency for bike shops to use bigger words than are necessary with a customer purchasing a bicycle. I mean, a lot of people just want to know if it's going to do what they need it to do. They don't need to know what the frame material is per se, or the 17 different types of brakes there are, or all about the drivetrain. They just want to know if it's going to get over the bridge easy enough for them. So I think a lot of our time and energy is spent doing that. And again, Outgrow is a big part of getting people on board onto that early funnel.
Awesome. So Brooklyn Bicycle Company, which is at brooklynbicycleco.com. And I'll leave you this last question. What's been the biggest lesson that you or the company has learned over the past year that you want to put into place moving forward?
Yeah, that's a great way to end it out. I mean, I think at the end of the day, we very much realize that, we're not out here to save people's lives. So we try to keep it pretty lighthearted and have fun. And a lot of that comes through with how we deal with our customers and our give a damn mentality that we go to the end of the world to make sure our customers are on the right product. They get a great experience delivering that. And then it's just continuing for us to continue to make sure we're telling that same story. Keep doing what we're doing, giving people great experiences, and continue to tell that story. And again, as I referenced earlier, the showroom has kind of brought that into a physical presence as opposed to just being able to do it virtually through our website on Shopify.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experience, Ryan.
Yeah, Felix, it's been great fun. I appreciate the questions, and I appreciate you having us on.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Shopify Masters, the e-commerce podcast for ambitious entrepreneurs powered by Shopify.